Hello
Hello
there.
there. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
This is episode 56. Today, we're watching 3 episodes that, in my opinion, exist. They definitely exist. They're called Shadow Warrior, Mercy Mission, and Nomad Droids.
Yeah, these were some really, let's just say there were some very interesting
They were
episodes.
interesting
I'm not
episodes.
quite sure what to make of them, to be honest, but
Me neither. Let's
we will
see. How do you want to divide this up? I want to
I
do
think
Mercy Mission.
okay,
That's the only one I really care about.
you do Mercy Mission and Nomad Droids and I'll do Shadow Warrior because I
Okay,
don't even
so
understand how to explain the last two.
okay, go ahead.
So, Shadow Warrior. This episode takes place on Naboo, and it's sort of a two-act episode. In the first act, we see Jar Jar, Padme, and Anakin journeying back to Naboo and visiting Otto Gunga and seeing the Gungans because the new leader, who goes by the name of Boss Leone, is planning to attack Feed and attack the Naboo and saying that they've been treated as second-class citizens. And this has horrified some people, but a lot of the citizens are on board. Now, it turns out that there is actually another Gungan, I forgot his name, who is
Richelieu.
using Rishlu. Yeah, there's another Gungan named Rishlu, whose name is very funny, as I'll get to later, for various historical reasons. But Rishlu is using a magical necklace to control Boss Leone. But when Anakin takes the necklace off Boss Leone realizes that he doesn't actually want to attack Naboo, and he thinks it's a bad idea. However, he gets shanked non-fatally by Richelieu, so it is up to none other than Jar Jar Binks to impersonate the leader of the Gungans to try and call off the invasion. And of course, then, what do you know? General Grievous shows up, and General Grievous is out for blood, but he is outsmarted by the Gungans, who capture him through the sacrifice, the brave self-sacrifice and tragic death of Captain Turples. And then, of course, Dooku and Sidious are like, "Oh man, we got to get Grievous back." So Dooku lures Anakin into a trap. Anakin gets captured, and then they negotiate a prisoner exchange. So it's really a lot. There's really a lot of action
Yeah.
in this episode. It's packed,
Your
but yeah,
description of
there's
the
mainly two
episode
parts.
provides exactly, in my opinion, what's wrong with it. I have many problems with this episode. Again, different Star Wars appeals to different people. I just found this episode extremely confusing for multiple reasons. Number one, there are several episodes of these that I've been rewatching the Clone Wars separately from this, and I'm fascinated by this concept of what I call an event episode. An episode
Hmm.
where they can't really decide on what is the one thing they want to happen, so they do more than one thing and hope it'll work. Spoiler, usually it doesn't work.
So you would say that this is an episode where
This is an event episode.
it feels like there are multiple different
Yeah,
things
they're
kind of
trying to do
happening.
two different, like, 4 different things at once, and they can't decide what one's the most important. They can't decide if it's the mind control. They can't decide if it's the Separatist invasion. They can't decide whether it's a Jar Jar episode. They can't decide whether it's a Gungan Society episode. They can't decide on any of that, so they just do all of it and hope it's gonna work. Spoiler, in my
It doesn't
opinion,
work.
it doesn't work. Yeah. The fortune cookie we have is who a person can truly is cannot be seen with the eye.
Yes, this was an interesting fortune cookie. I think it could apply to both Jar Jar and Boss Leone
I was
because Jar
thinking
Jar,
Richelieu.
I guess Richelieu a bit. The way I interpreted it, Jar Jar knew who, and it also Padme Anakin knew who Boss Leone truly was, so they knew that he was under some influence, you know.
Yeah.
Also, however, in this episode, I think it could apply to Jar Jar because he is very clumsy and incompetent. But in this episode, you could say he kind of saves the day twice in both parts of the episode. You know, in
Yeah.
the first act, he successfully somehow bungles his way into making everyone believe that he is Boss Leone and calling off the invasion. And then he stalls General Grievous and lures him out of his ship successfully so that he can be captured. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I think maybe it's about Jar Jar, but honestly, this one didn't feel like it really.
I didn't
It felt
even
like they
take
just
the.
had to put something sort of like we'll just put this. It'll be what
We'll
it
just
is,
slap
you
a
know.
fortune cookie on this bad boy.
Yeah, just like it has to be.
I honestly didn't analyze this super well in my notes because I just didn't care. Like I just didn't care about this episode enough.
Mm,
Um,
and
yeah. So, by the way, let me ask you something. What's the separatist obsession with Naboo?
I mean, I think Dooku kind of said it. Um, when he says at one point when he's dueling Anakin, Anakin says, "Why bring the war to Naboo?" He says, "The war started on Naboo." So I think in his mind, this like the original battle of Naboo was the start. But I think that there it is alluded that there is a Sith presence on Naboo, or maybe has been for a long time. You know, with all these the different in various episodes, we see the different underground chambers and secret rooms that Count
Yeah.
Dooku's in. And I
It,
mean, I think also we can't forget that Palpatine, of course, he's from Naboo. He's a
yeah.
cultured gentleman. That makes total sense. But so he probably has some reason or another to want to be to want to do something with Naboo.
Yeah.
Although clearly we don't really know what.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like it's it's odd that Naboo, which is such a Republic loyal planet, gets constantly targeted by separatists over and over again, and like they
Yeah.
somehow do well every single time, even if they don't succeed. Also, let me ask you another question. There's no. You're telling me that if a boss, a Gungan boss, is like injured or unconscious or unable to perform the duties of their office, say like a president in American society, there's no protocol for that.
Yeah, there's no backup.
There's no
Yeah, I
just
would have thought there would be something, you know.
yeah. It
But
seems it's
yeah.
extremely odd.
I thought it was one thing that was weird was I don't even mind Jar Jar that much anymore. I don't know. I kind of I'm not gonna say I love him, but you know,
I don't mind him either because there are like six other problems with this episode that are way
I
bigger than Jar Jar.
don't know. I think he has a certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know
but
what you're
I
talking
thought
about.
it was interesting. Theed in this episode when we go back and see it, it seems like Theed is literally darker, and you have some of the bulbs kind of flickering. And I
Yeah.
thought that maybe that was a nod to kind of the lack of prosperity that was creating this frustration. I mean, I'm not
Well,
sure exactly, but
there's
I
that
thought it was interesting.
line from there's that throwaway line that I think would beautifully illustrate this from Heroes on Both Sides. When Padme is giving the speech to the Senate, Tekla's food have no light to read or study from. It's about how the Clone War is affecting the lives of everyday citizens on Naboo because Naboo's budget is probably being spent. They're going towards the Republic playing for clones and going towards themselves probably paying for more clone battalions and local security and all that kind of stuff because it's wartime. So I don't think it's prosperity for I think it's about I think it could be about the idea that the war is destroying a lot of people's regular way of life in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I think I think also, yeah. One cool thing that I noticed also is that I don't know, this episode felt very George Lucasy
It
sort of
did.
in
It
the with the
actually
mind
did.
control. Like I feel like if that was in the prequels, it could have been a metaphor for political leaders being compromised by money or something like that. I
Yeah.
think that's definitely
This
something
episode actually
Lucas
did feel very
would
George
do.
Lucasy in um and I'm not saying that to disparage George Lucas at all. I'm just saying like I don't think it being George Lucasy was its problem. Um, I think being very Lucas-esque is is a facet of the episode.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, yeah. By the way, did you cringe internally when Richelieu said to Dooku, "Events Desa proceeding as planned, Count"? I
Yeah, that
internally,
was
I just
interesting.
face palmed. I'm like,
Yeah, I
really?
was like, oh my god.
We're doing the evil plot now with a Gungan? Do we have to? What are you gonna say about Richelieu's name?
Yeah, that was one thing I think I kind of assumed, and I assume that this is correct because I couldn't see any other explanation, but I assumed that the name Richelieu was a reference to a Cardinal Richelieu, the historical figure from the French Revolution who was known for just like going ham and having a bunch of people executed during that time. And he was part of the radical phase of the French Revolution. So I think maybe they were calling this guy Richelieu because he was um, super ruthless and wanted to. He kind of pitched the attack on Theed as a war against the oppressive Naboo, when in his hypnotic speech when when Boss Leone says, you know, they're treating us like second class citizens. Or it could just totally be a coincidence. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I struggled with the I look for a lot of themes in the episodes, and I struggled with this one. One of the things I thought of for Shadow Warrior was the idea of leaders and influence. You know, when we see Leone, the Lu controlled Leone, um, preaching all these things, that we had that very malleable will of the people that's talked about in Mandalore and Onderon and all of these different and Mon Calamari and all that. Anything involving a planet that has citizens normally free from the influence of the overbearing influence of the Republic or the Separatists, we have that idea of the will of the people. And this is a very will
Yes.
of the people episode where we have, the idea of, once once Jar Jar as Leone calls everything off, they just stop. They just don't do it anymore, they just don't. But they were all ready to attack Naboo when Leone was being controlled by Luke. They were seconds away.
Yeah,
Um,
they were. I thought it was kind of funny how Padme kept saying, "Oh, you look just like Boss Leone," and then
Jar
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 said,
kept saying, "No, we don't look
"We
anything
all
alike. What
don't
are you
look
talking
alike."
about?" And it's like I imagine there's like a extended cut where Jar Jar's like, "Listen here, you racist. We don't look
Yeah,
alike. I don't know
yeah.
what
I was
you're
about
getting
to
at here,
say,
buddy."
is Padme
I was
a
like,
secret closet space racist?
I think Padme is a secret space racist because in Attack of the Clones, she says we all have. She says like we all get angry, Annie. It's what makes us human. Hmm,
Oh,
human,
yeah.
you say?
Very,
And I
very
mean,
nice,
that's
very nice
probably just
touch.
like some script writing stuff, but still, like,
Oh, it's definitely some script
hmm,
writing stuff, but we can't ignore
interesting,
it. Cannot
interesting.
ignore
Yeah,
this. Yeah. So Grievous comes on to Naboo because, of course, Grievous has to come on to Naboo because he does, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so by the way, let's all acknowledge how pissed Grievous gets at Jar Jar. Like, he absolutely blows his top. It's hilarious. And I
I
love
know
Grievous.
it's yeah. I think this was the sit down meeting between Jar Jar and Grievous was definitely the highlight of the episode with for
Yes,
me
it
because
was.
it's kind of hilarious. I think it definitely says something. I'm not sure what, but it says something that
It definitely
for
says
all the
something.
Jedi that Grievous has killed, for all the powerful Jedi and highly trained clone troopers that Grievous just runs through like a knife through warm butter, Jar Jar is the one who sits down at a table face to face with a very angry General Grievous and still escapes with not a scratch on his body.
Yeah, don't ask me how that. Okay, never mind. Anyway,
I think
yeah,
it says something. Maybe
yeah.
Darth Jar Jar, possibly.
Please, Darth Jar Jar. I hope that's what that
Darth Jar
means.
Jar.
Yeah, the fact that okay, let me just say this. Okay, Grievous getting captured and like owned by Gungans this episode is really silly. It's just really silly.
I kind of love it though because I feel like it has the same message as the Ewoks in
Oh, I
Return of the
thought you were gonna
Jedi.
say that's a good point, but there's also I thought you were gonna talk about Hondo
Hondo.
with Anakin and Obi-Wan and Dooku in season 1.
Not really. I didn't really see any connection there. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Like through trickery and just outsmarting the enemy, a way more powerful enemy, managing to take them down.
Yeah. And I think it wasn't even necessarily the trickery, it was just the audacity that they had
Yeah.
because clearly like Count Dooku or no, shoot, not Count Dooku. Grievous didn't even expect or yeah,
All the
Grievous didn't
droids
even
to be shut down.
expect yeah, Grievous didn't expect any oh what's the
Resistance.
blanking the word? Yeah, he didn't expect any resistance. He didn't expect anyone to stand up to him. So simply by taking some any kind of action, by taking one action, the Gungans are able to gain the upper hand and outsmart him just because just because of the fact that you know he didn't expect that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just so weird. Um, and then we get oh my god, one of like maybe one of my favorite quotes from this episode. One of the only quotes that really stands out to me. Grievous and Captain Tarpals are fighting, and Grievous stabs Tarpals through the abdomen, and
Yeah,
he says
brutal.
to Tarpals, "How does it feel to die?" And Tarpals says back, "Not die, sacrifice."
Yeah,
That is a really good quote. That is like really good.
yeah. I love that moment where again Grievous doesn't expect. I think part of what makes this brilliant and kind of a fun part of the episode, and again the highlight of the episode is just Grievous is Grievous gets confounded by Jar Jar, like by just by everyone, but simply because he like did not expect any kind of resistance. He expected to just be able to walk all over everyone like he always does. So I
Yeah.
think that just goes to show, you know?
It's an idea that's brought up again over and over in Star Wars that the villains always seem like they have the better firepower. They are always seem like they have the bigger guns.
Yeah,
They always seem like they have the upper hand in terms of like firepower. But the heroes always have the heart, always have the courage, always have, and that always wins.
yeah. And we see
It
that here.
Yeah, we see that here. Tarpals has the audacity to rally his Gungans to destroy Grievous, just like all the ships coming out on Exegol in 9, or like all the Ewoks swarming the ATST in Jedi, or like all of the Jedi and clones rallying to victory on Geonosis despite impossible odds.
Yeah,
The good
that's
guys
kind
have
of
that
something we
heart.
see over and over in Star Wars.
Yeah. I
And I
really like
think
that. Yeah.
this is like the one I think one of the most Star Wars moments of all because it's so obviously about the underdog.
Yeah.
Like you got
There's
a
that.
bunch of Gungans defeating Grievous.
There's also that quote from Ambush from Yoda. Smaller in number are we, but larger in mind.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
And I think if we connect it to that, I think the message is these Gungans, like they may seem silly, but that doesn't mean they're not smart.
yeah.
That doesn't mean they don't. It
They
doesn't mean they're
can.
not worth something just because like they talk
Yeah,
differently.
I
But I
definitely
thought that
agree.
was cool.
Richelieu is just hiding in a random like statue on Naboo. That's a little odd, but okay. Um, Richelieu gets Anakin there, and then Dooku kills him for
Being a
reasons.
fool. I think maybe he killed him to make it look. I think he killed him to make it look convincing, because he said, Richelieu, leave, don't make it obvious, but lure Anakin here. So then I think by killing Richelieu, like if Dooku had said, "Good job, Richelieu," or just let him go, then Anakin might have known
An-
that it
An-
was a
Anakin
trap
was
and he
already
could have
there.
escaped.
Anakin
Yeah,
was already there.
I know, but he could have backed out. He could have. He was right at the door when that happens. He could have ran out the other way. He could have called for backup.
Yeah, I mean the door closes right behind him though. Like
Yeah, I don't know. I think there.
it's
I
a
think there's a.
weird flimsy timing thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Um,
think there's. I think he has his reasons
okay, yeah.
to kill Richelieu,
I wish they
as
were
macabre as it may be. I think he has his
yeah,
reasons.
yeah. Um, and Dooku and Anakin duel. And I love, by the way, how we see it's not Dooku versus Anakin. It's Dooku and those four Magna Guards versus Anakin. Dooku has a drive to win more than he usually does, because
Yeah,
usually
absolutely.
it's Anakin on the offensive and it's the Jedi are on the offensive, but now it's Dooku on the offensive. And Dooku has that drive, and the Magna Guards just overwhelm Anakin. And then Anakin's captured, and Padme and Jar Jar have to reckon with this. One line that I love, and by love I mean love how stupid it is. Padme says to Dooku, "Stop! You cannot torture a prisoner." Did you
He just
catch that
says, "I
line?
don't know." Yeah, I caught that line. Yeah,
What the heck?
I mean, it's pretty funny
Dooku
coming
can do
from.
whatever the hell
Yeah,
he wants.
I mean, it's pretty funny coming from Padme, given that at this point we've already seen what happened to Poggle the Lesser, poor Poggle.
Oof!
So
Ouch!
it
Padme
is a
doesn't know
little bit
about that, but I get your
yeah,
point.
it is a bit ironic
I'm like, what are
when
you
the
gonna do about it,
subject of the
Padme?
torture is Anakin, who previously used torture to get
Yeah.
information.
Or like Cad Bane in Children of the Force. The
Yeah,
group mind trick thing.
that's true. Yeah, I don't find that as bad, but yeah, definitely,
I
definitely
mean, that almost
interesting.
like destroyed his mind.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
like that's torture right there.
it is definitely torture. It
Um,
was kind of accidental torture.
yeah. And then we get a weird. There's that idea. There's that thing from that TV show, The Good Place, the trolley problem. It was made famous by The Good Place, but it's the trolley problem where you pull a lever, and then a trolley, uh, what is it again?
Yeah, but I know the
Um,
trolley problem.
yeah,
The trolley is going towards. Yeah, I think it's the trolley's going toward five people, maybe. And if you pull the lever, then you can divert the trolley, and it's going towards one person, something
yeah,
like that.
but
So
it's
the idea is,
Anakin.
do you take action to kill one person but save five, or do you not do anything and presumably let? I guess you could say what fated to happen. I think it's pretty
Yeah,
gruesome, but
but
there you have it.
it's the do they make the trade for Anakin and Grievous sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and you know, I realized that they made it out to seem like Padme was putting her emotions first, and all of that. But really, trading Anakin for Grievous doesn't. I mean, I'd say actually Grievous was probably a little bit like, Grievous was probably like the best strategical move was them for to not do it. But really, in the grand scheme of things, it probably doesn't matter that much. Anakin is going to go on to save tons of people, and Grievous is going to go on to kill tons of people, disregarding the Vader thing for a second. Both of them are going to go on to do that, so does it really matter? You know,
Yeah, I mean,
the only thing is, like, if they capture Grievous, they can end the war quicker, but presumably if the Separatists captured Anakin, they could also end the war earlier.
Yeah.
So it
It. I
doesn't
mean,
matter that much.
yeah. It doesn't matter that much in the end.
Yeah.
But because yeah, I think I mean obviously they don't know that Grievous is just a pawn, an errand boy,
Actually, they do
as
know
Obi-Wan
that,
would
but
say.
okay.
I mean, I mean, look, Obi-Wan kind of knows it, but they just know that he's an
A
errand boy in
pawn
the
for
sense of,
Dooku.
oh, he's Dooku's pawn. They don't know he's Dooku's pawn, and he's also Sidious's pawn, so he is completely disposable. And
Yeah.
capturing him would definitely not end the war. They don't know that. They think
Yeah.
he, even though
They
they
think
know
he's
he
more
has
valuable than he
no,
is.
here. Let's put it this way. They know that Grievous has no autonomy. They don't know that Grievous has no real power. Because you can still have power and have no autonomy. Like
Yeah.
if your boss is just breathing down your neck all the time,
Yeah.
like Dooku and Grievous.
They know
So I think
that
there's a distinction there.
Grievous is a they know that Grievous isn't the number one, but they don't know that he is just kind of disposable.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't know that Grievous is as disposable as the armies he commands.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's that disposable, but I think it's definitely an interesting question. This is probably the closest that Anakin and Grievous get in the Clone Wars, and I think the only reason they haven't met yet, again, I guess is because Anakin is kind of unconscious
Yeah,
during that
and
prisoner
you know the
exchange. I
real
mean,
behind the scenes reason they didn't have them meet then.
yeah,
For those of you who don't know, Anakin says to Grievous things, and Grievous says to Anakin things in Revenge of the Sith that indicates they have never met. So they cannot meet through any point in the Clone Wars because, according to Revenge of the Sith, they have never met.
So I guess that implies then that during the prisoner exchange, Grievous doesn't know that it's Anakin.
Or Grievous just doesn't see Anakin.
I mean, I think he sees him because I'm pretty sure, unless I misinterpreted it, there was a moment when they were right passing each other when Grievous looked down as he was being walked
Maybe he
by
couldn't
and
see
laughed.
Anakin accurately.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't know it was Anakin. Obviously, like he saw the Jedi being dragged on the ground and he laughed. It was like, haha, Jedi pawn.
Yeah.
But to me, it is very sad that Captain Tarpals makes the ultimate sacrifice to capture Grievous, and then they immediately have to trade him away. Thanks to Padme immediately makes the call to trade him away just because Anakin goes off super recklessly and gets himself captured.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
trying
do
to start
understand
anything,
that.
but I'm just saying maybe there is a reason the Jedi avoid attachments. Hashtag Team Windu. Hashtag sorry not sorry.
Ouch. I actually think that because I think with Grievous's recapture, we see the droids leaving Naboo. I don't think that would have happened as quickly or at
Yeah,
all.
definitely.
If so, I think Captain Tarkle's sacrifice was actually more
Yeah,
significant than we might think.
yeah. Maybe it wasn't completely in vain. I would
Yeah,
say.
I don't know if the Separatists would have stayed on Naboo if the whole Grievous thing hadn't happened, but if they did leave. You know what I mean? That did actually
They
happen.
did leave.
So,
Yeah, that is true.
yeah. Another problem, by the way, I just want to say I had with this episode. Did you have a tone problem with this episode, or was that just me?
A tone problem. Ooh, elaborate.
It couldn't decide what tone it wanted to be. We have mind control. We have, we have mind control. We have, like, shoot. We have like super secret labs, and we have like silly Gungans, and like.
Yeah, I think.
But then there's like political intrigue, and there's that. This episode is a very just generally dark episode.
Yeah,
Whether
that's
it's
what made.
literally dark or if it's like thematically dark.
Yeah,
So it has these silly ideas, but then it's dark at the same time.
yeah. I think that's what makes this episode feel like it is so distinctively two acts because yeah, pretty much the two acts feel so different. I think you're absolutely right about that. We have this super kind of early early like kind of 1980s Marvel comic, super whimsical feel with all
Yeah.
the mind control stuff, and then it immediately transitions into super kind of dark,
Dark,
gritty, like
politically.
prisoner exchange kind of Bridge of Spies kind of thing.
Yeah. and it feels unnatural.
I would say it feels
Um,
unnatural, but I would say they definitely could have made these into
yeah,
two separate episodes.
yeah,
It does kind of feel like they just jammed two ideas together.
yeah. You know, Star Wars misses sometimes, and that's fine. Jacob and I are getting our fills early in this season. I got Water War and the Mon Calamari stuff. Jacob's getting Umbara.
We got to balance
Um,
it out.
yeah, it's fine if it misses sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a complete wash. Like we did get some pretty
Yeah,
great moments. Like the whole Grievous sequence was everything from the moment that Jar Jar walked onto Grievous's ship until the moment Grievous was dragged off. I thought that was pure gold.
yeah,
I
it was
thought if
pretty
the rest
good.
of the episode was like that, this would be a classic.
Yeah, I think so. I think it
I
would
think the
be on the
episode was
level of
so
like Bombad Jedi.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Bombad
definitely.
Jedi is a better is a better version of this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Let's go to Mercy Mission. In Mercy Mission, R2 and 3PO aid the Wolf Pack of clone troopers in helping with supplies for the devastated world of Aleen. There they figure out and solve a conflict between the surface-dwelling Alina and the creatures that dwell beneath the surface, including the mysterious Orphne and creatures that I'm going to be referring to for the entirety of this episode as Treants. You cannot convince me otherwise. Those creatures are Treants in Star Wars. Why? You, that's why.
It's really just like a well, why not kind of moment.
It is. It so is. Yeah.
Yeah, this episode really reminded me of Legends and some of the more whimsical aspects. Like in Legends in the old EU, you've got your singing mountains, you've got your
Yes.
neon green bunny rabbits, although I guess that's
Yeah.
canon now.
That is canon.
But I feel like this episode, one thing I will say about it, although I didn't enjoy it particularly, was that it did bring back some of that more mysterious, whimsical feel from a lot of the old expanded universe material, especially the comics of the
I
1980s
agree.
and the 1990s.
I agree. There's a whimsical feel to this episode that I really appreciate. Fortune Cookie, understanding is honoring the truth beneath the surface. I mean, there's quite a literal interpretation of this because they go literally beneath the surface. But there's, of course, that metaphorical meaning of R2 and 3PO figure out that what is going on Aleen is not what everyone thinks is going on, and the Republic sees a crisis and acts on the face value crisis level, not they don't try to understand the greater conflict in that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think, we really see this with the clone troopers. The clone
Yeah,
troopers really just drop off the supplies for the Eilenians and they just say, we can't do anything else. We can't look into this. We can't try and solve this. We're just doing our job. And then it's ending up being C3PO and R2D2 who then, come through and figure it out and solve the crisis.
absolutely. Yeah. Uh, by the way, here's something interesting. Did you notice how out of their element all the clone troopers were in this episode?
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe
And
had we had a more unconventional clone trooper, like maybe Rex, for example, maybe this would have gone differently. But with Wolf, super kind of
yeah, and
not super, but a little more straight laced, a little more by the book.
and it brings me back to the deserter. The
Yeah,
clones aren't equipped for situations that are not fighting battles.
yeah.
But
I mean,
the Republic
they're
thinks they
bred to
can
be
just
soldiers. Yeah.
but the Republic thinks they can just slap clone troopers wherever they need and it'll be fine.
This definitely shows how not everything can just be solved by throwing traditional humanitarian aid at it. Like
Yeah.
you can't just throw food and water at medical supplies at something until it goes away. And sure, that's
Yeah.
oftentimes going to be a lifesaver, but in a
Yeah.
situation like
And it
this one,
helped the Alina, but
yeah,
like.
but no one, and then like no one actually asked the Alina what they needed.
By the way, let me ask you about something. the two people who we see with the Alina's relief efforts right now, right? Who are they? Like that talk to Wolf. They're Padme and Yoda. Why is Padme there? What does Padme have to do with the people of Aleen? Does Padme just like why?
Yeah.
Why, Padme? Why? What are you doing there? How much work do you do? Aren't you fighting a war right now?
Yeah.
I have a bad feeling that it's Padme because she cares and nobody else does, but like,
yeah, it's kind of Padme's thing, you could say. It definitely just seems like this is something that Padme is doing because, she's a humanitarian. She's used to doing this kind of thing. But yeah, it is interesting the way they make it feel somehow trivial. I'm not sure why that is.
they get down to the planet. One of my favorite lines from here. Okay, who packed the translator droid? I love this line. As like someone who's really into lore, I love the idea that the protocol droid's just like an iPad. Okay, who packed the tanning cream? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it definitely shows also the difference. I don't know maybe the difference, but it kind of shows what how the clones view things. They're very straightforward, a little bit brusque, just kind of, let's get this done, but they don't really think about things in different ways. They just say like, oh, this translator droid, it's a tool. It's not a droid. It doesn't have a personality. Like this is not
Yeah.
C3PO. This is walking. This is a walking like dictionary, basically.
Yeah. Um. Anything before we get down beneath the surface?
Um, I'm good to go to the surface. Let's do it.
Yeah. I want to point out first of all, I love how amazing the Clone Wars can be with world building when it tries. It really tries here, and I really appreciate that. We get these weird and whimsical creatures, and it's just because the Clone Wars writers sat down and tried. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I
100%.
don't feel like they tried with Shadow Warrior, for example. I feel like they thought we can just slap Gungans there and make shenanigans happen and it'll be good. And it was fine, but like, when the Clone Wars tries, it can do good world building. Is my point.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh. So yeah. So they come upon this temple. C3PO approaches the temple like that down thing, which by the way reminded me of the Progate temple in
Oh yeah,
Temple
100% Progate Temple.
in not Temple of Doom. I keep saying that in Legacy of Terror. And C3PO has a bad feeling about this because of course he should.
Yes, he does. He always does.
He always does. Uh, and then so they fall down, and then they're followed. Okay, Jacob. What are these particles?
I guess they're the person. They become that person. I can't remember their
Orphne?
name. They become. Wait, sorry. What's her name?
Orphne?
Yeah, they become Orphne.
They're just like her symbol or something.
Oh, I mean, I think this is definitely one of those episodes where it says suspend disbelief.
Yeah.
Don't think about it too much. We're gonna
Yeah.
take you on a magical mystery tour through whatever the heck all this is, or whatever this all is.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I just
Yeah, it's fine.
it's just like it's weird to me that there's just here's some particles. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, these cave systems. I really love these cave systems. They remind me of like the inside of the Exegorth, the space slug, and like a combination of that and like Dagobah.
Yeah.
I really like the cave systems. They're really unique and cool.
Yeah. There were some things I didn't like about this episode, but one of the things that I liked was really the scenery. It was really well done, I thought.
Absolutely. It says a lot to me that even with the questionable things, this is the best episode in my opinion of the three.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I think if we take out the whole mercy mission idea of the episode and we made it about the conflict between the Alina and the Ents, um, maybe split this episode into two parts. Maybe do the
Yeah,
first part,
perhaps.
which is about the helping with the Alina, and then the second part, which is completely dedicated to the conflict between the Alina and the Ents, and who Orphne is, why she's there. Give that some more time to grow a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm befuddled by this episode, but yeah. um, any thoughts, or should we just move on to the last? I guess you could call it episode.
Yeah, let's move on. I didn't even this episode to me was just inscrutable. I didn't even have any good trivia that I could find.
In Nomad Droids, in an episode inspired, in my opinion, by the old Droids cartoons of the 1980s and 90s, R2D2 and C3PO on their way back from from the mission to Aleen go on various different adventures, including teaching a group of very small creatures about democracy, overthrowing an oppressive pit droid, hologram society, um, almost being forced to fight other droids aboard a pirate ship, and almost being melted down aboard a separatist cruiser before they finally make it home to the Republic.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a bonkers episode. I thought this was
Let me talk about this episode's fortune cookie because I hate it. This episode's fortune cookie
okay.
is the worst fortune cookie so far in the Clone Wars. They just slap a random New Hope quote and put it as the fortune cookie.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. I thought it definitely
It's Obi-Wan. That's what it is.
yeah, they definitely could have
Who's
done
more
better here.
foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him?
This episode didn't really hit the spot, in my opinion.
It did
It
not.
felt very it felt kind of like a Forces of Destiny-esque
Forces of
short
Destiny is better than
adventure.
this. Let me tell you, Forces of Destiny is better than this.
Yeah, yeah, that's my point. Like if you want a short wacky adventure that ends up being of little consequence, like go watch Forces of Destiny. Like I
Yeah,
know that the
and
Clone Wars, I know it doesn't have to be like super intense and dark and gritty all the time, but
no, of course not.
I
But
want it to
this,
feel a little bit more cohesive than this. This was the
yeah,
it
yeah,
felt like it reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite, the way it felt like it had very little plot. I don't know.
like
Maybe that's
okay.
maybe
Let me
Napoleon Dynamite. I'm
First
not
of
sure.
all, I want to point out from the narrator speech on the planet Aleen, R2D2 and C3PO were involved in adventures beyond their comprehension. Now they will be involved in adventures beyond any human's comprehension.
Yes, that is exactly how this episode feels. I agree completely. I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean the adventures are somewhat fun and interesting, but like, yeah. So first of all, let me talk about the C3PO references in this, which I think are really cool actually.
Mm, okay.
Adigalia's first line in the episode is, "They've destroyed the main reactor." C3PO's first line in the episode is, "Did you hear that?" In A New Hope, C3PO's first lines were as follows: "Did you hear that? They shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure."
Yeah.
So they just basically distributed C3PO's lines among everybody at the beginning of this episode, which I think is brilliant. I think it's one of the most brilliant things about this episode.
Yeah.
They escape in a Y-wing, and I saw a small story credit in the bottom right-hand corner that said Y-wing added in by Thomas Harper. The first planet they go down to is Petite Petuna. That's what I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna look at this Petite Petitite, yeah, Petitite Petuna.
Wow, that is a mouthful.
That is definitely a mouthful. So this mini story, I call them all of them mini stories because that's what they are.
Yeah, they're mini stories.
This mini story is a weird one. Did this feel at all to you like a little bit of a white savior story?
Not really. I
Or
wouldn't say
like
that.
for
It was
me it
just
felt
kind
like
of
a
like,
commentary on white savior stories.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't really get that. I didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't feel that deep to me. Again, like I said, it felt like kind of a almost. It felt like a throwaway arc. Again, with all the deleted arcs that we now know about, the deleted stories that they could have used, it does kind of hurt a little bit that they choose to include this
Yeah.
in the final cut of the season. But it is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. But like so C3PO and R2 accidentally kill the leader, the Big Hazu. Yes, the Big Hazu is the name of this guy. And so they wish. So the remaining Petitite Petunans wish for C3PO and R2 to stay on as their leaders, which reminded me of the Ewoks from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I think it could have
They
been a
think I'm some
reference.
sort of god.
I think it definitely could have been a reference to that.
Yeah. But then C3PO teaches them democracy unsuccessfully
Yeah, that
because
part was, I don't know.
that part was
I wouldn't
actually
say
kind of
it
funny in my
was,
opinion.
I don't know.
And then they fly to this planet called Balnab. And this Balnab is
This
the
is where it
weirdest
really,
story of all.
this is where it really gets
All,
crazy.
all. So there are people being manipulated by a false hologram controlled by over controlling pit droids.
I mean, I
What's the
think the premise of
stories?
this one is the best. I think it's pretty funny. Like
I
they're
think it's
pit
really crazy
droids.
and weird, but like what's the point of it? Is it supposed to be about the dangers of artificial intelligence? Because when you make the heroes also artificial intelligence, you don't make
Yeah,
a really great point
I don't
about
know.
that.
I don't think it. I think again, I really don't think these episodes had any message. Honestly,
I mean, I don't think this
they
one
were just
had
kind
many
of,
messages. No.
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Uh
They're just gonna let's be weird and wacky for the sake of being weird and wacky.
yeah.
That's what they felt
Speaking
like
of
to
weird and
me.
wacky, did you notice the pit droid as the facility exploded? One of them said, "There goes my empire,"
Yep.
which is one of the funniest lines I've heard from this episode.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting.
It, yeah. Uh, Let me ask you one other question. So 3PO and R2 randomly run out of power on Balnab. How did they run out of power on Balnab and not on Tatooine or the forest moon of Endor or anywhere?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe they had not gone with charging, or maybe they had gone without charging for a long time, presumably. But it is
Or like maybe like yeah.
it's a choice. We'll just say that it's definitely a
It
narrative
is
choice
it
that
is a
that
it
the
is a choice.
director or the writer or whoever made when they were
Yeah,
when they were figuring this one out.
yeah. I get Star Wars is for kids and I get it's supposed to be silly, but like this is weird.
Yeah, I mean,
Um yeah. Um this episode in my opinion is the ultimate event episode. And I say that not
mm,
like the ultimate as in it's great. I mean the ultimate as it's like the prime
it's the
example of an
most
event
eventy.
episode. It's
Yeah,
the most eventy, yeah. Where you have all these stories that they couldn't really figure out how to develop into larger stories. So what they did was they just dropped them all. They just did.
yeah,
And that's fine. That's fine for an episode. I don't think I'd love an entire series out of this, which makes me excited for when we get to Droids, the actual TV show. But yeah. Any more thoughts about these, or do you want to talk about how we'd rank the three of these?
let's rank them. Yeah.
I'm interested to hear
Let's
your take. Go first.
okay. I think in number one, by a very, very wide margin, Shadow Warrior. Number two, Mercy Mission. And number three, of course, Nomad Droids.
Number one, for me, is Mercy Mission.
Wow.
Number two is Nomad Droids, and number three, by a very wide margin, is Shadow Warrior.
So we're the
Uh,
opposite. Oh no,
yeah, I couldn't stand that
not quite
episode.
the opposite. Not quite the opposite, but yeah,
We had the opposite opinions on Shadow Warrior.
we did. Yes.
Yeah, I could not stand that episode. That episode is one of my least five favorite episodes of the Clone Wars as of this point.
Mm.
It's like brain invaders and downfall of a droid, and Shadow Warrior down there. I don't know. It just did not speak to me at all. Yeah. We're about to. I will say this. We're about to do like war and grit and death. So it is nice to have a 3 episode break from that. Even if the episodes weren't great, you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
Um. So, now it is time for everyone's favorite part of Star Wars in a Galaxy.
What you've brought me today is worth 1/4 portion.
That's right. Everybody's favorite part today. We have another quick rank.
Yes, we do.
Eli, do you want to go first?
Yes, Jacob. Top 5 unbelievable moments in Star Wars, good or bad. In honor of Shadow Warrior, top 5 moments. Here's what I'll explain, and I'll give mine 5 to you. That when you saw these moments, good or bad, you could not believe that they actually did it.
All right.
So here's my
All right.
5. So for example, number 5 was from Shadow Warriors, Grievous being defeated by Gungans. Really? They actually did that? Number
Say what you want about it. It's unexpected.
Yeah. Number 4, in season 7, when Maul contacts Dryden Voss on Mandalore.
Ooh.
Like, wow, really? They put Dryden Voss in there? Like, that's pretty cool. Number 3, Thrawn and Rebels. Really? They brought Thrawn into Rebels? Number 2 was a personal choice for me. Rey Skywalker. When they actually came right out and said, yeah, Rey is choosing who she wants to be, with people she wants to identify with. That was just mind-blowing to me. I knew we could interpret the trilogy in that way. I didn't think they were just going to come right out and say it. And then number 1, we got to give it to my boy Cobb Vanth for just appearing in a couple chapters of a book or 2 or 3, and then just suddenly getting an appearance played by Timothy Olyphant in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So that's my list. What do you got?
Man, this is hard. This is really hard. These are in no particular order because sorry, but I think in my number 5, I think the entire Kylo Ren and Han scene in The Force Awakens, my jaw kind of hit the floor when I saw that for the first time in the theaters. My number 4 spot, I think Thrawn and Rebels. You know, I already knew about Thrawn from the EU, but I hadn't read a ton about it. I read a ton of the books that had him in it, but nevertheless, I was super hyped when they decided to bring him into Rebels. It was, oh my gosh, it was so exciting. I was so excited, and it was such a great moment when he finally made his appearance after all the hype from the trailers. In my number 3 spot, I'm going to say Grievous getting defeated by Gungans. Maybe not in this order, but yeah, one spot has to go to Grievous getting defeated by Gungans. You know, that was really unexpected and shocking, but in a good way. Number 2, oh boy, I think my number 2 spot would be Ezra kind of saving Ahsoka in the world between worlds.
Yeah.
That was an absolute mind boggler. And then finally, I would have to go with the I am your father, the classic from Empire Strikes Back. Even though I already knew what happened the first time I watched The Empire Strikes Back, it was still just a pretty mind-boggling moment when put into context of seeing that entire movie for the first time and seeing everything that Vader does and what Luke does leading up to that moment and after that moment. That's my list.
Interesting list. Really interesting list. What do you got for your top 5?
All right. What are your top 5 Star Wars movies based on the music?
So scores.
Yeah, top 5 scores.
I would go. Number 1 is undoubtedly The Force Awakens. Number 2 is undoubtedly Revenge of the Sith. Number 3 is undoubtedly, shoot. 3 is New Hope. 4 is Skywalker, and 5 is, shoot, man, I don't know. 5 is, it's gonna be either Empire or Phantom Menace. I'm gonna go with Phantom Menace. I'm gonna go with Phantom Menace. So 5 Phantom Menace, 4 Rise of Skywalker, 3. What did I say? Okay, let me try this again. 5 Phantom Menace, 4 Rise of Skywalker, 3 Return of the Jedi, 2 Revenge of the Sith, and 1 Force Awakens.
All right. This is really tough for me, but I think number 5, Attack of the Clones. You have Padme's theme, the romance themes. In number 4, Revenge of the Sith. That's pretty epic.
Revenge of the Sith is just a masterclass on score, honestly.
Actually, no. Number 4, number 5, Attack of the Clones. Number 4, Force Awakens. Number 3, I love the Force Awakens music. It's so good.
I
Number
I had it
3,
at number 1. That's my favorite soundtrack of all of them.
it is really good. It's really good. Number 3, Revenge of the Sith. Number 2, Return of the Jedi, and number 1, A New Hope.
Good list. Yeah. We both put Force Awakens and Revenge of the Sith high for good reasons, because they're both incredibly epic scores. Though I really love all of them. Don't get me wrong, I really do love all of them.
Yeah.
I didn't put Last Jedi on there, but that's great music. I didn't put Attack of the Clones, some great music, Anyway, that's gonna be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. Next episode, we're gonna have a very special treat. Nessa is coming back on the show to talk Umbara with us. That's gonna be really fun. And in the meantime, you can check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Wherever you get your podcast, we will probably be there. Follow us on Twitter at In a Galaxy Pod, Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. You can check us out on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Star Wars in a Galaxy. You can please leave a 5-star rating and review. It really does help. You can email us with all your questions and hot takes and all that kind of stuff at swinagalaxy@gmail.com. And until then, may the Force be with you always.